So let's get started and go through a few things. Here's what we're going to cover in the next hour. Andrew. We're going to talk about what is 1Salesforce, what's been happening so far, what the coming year should look like in terms of 1Salesforce, some terminology and technology things that some of which you may have heard, some of which will be new, just the level sets everyone knows. Everyone has the same language, and then we'll take time for questions and discussion. So I'm going to aim to try to be done, my slides in half an hour or so, and then so that we can get into the discussions. And then I will post this deck and this recording up on Chatter when we're done. So a quote that came out of a 1Salesforce deck that's been spread around the company. So Salesforce.com acquires more companies like us. The desire to reduce integration costs and dependencies while keeping innovation high has made our products more separate than our customers, large and small, want. And this pain is being felt throughout all of Salesforce, not just Marketing Cloud specifically. And so the mandate is coming down right from the CEO's office that we need to make these products look and feel like one product and not a bunch of things that we've cobbled together. So, what is 1Salesforce? It is, to a large extent, a unified authentication and authorization scheme, a unified look and feel, and a unified API. So these are things that are going to touch across all products. That's why it's important for us to talk about it. So let's talk about what's been happening so far. There's been ideation and vision coming from Marcel. If you have not watched the kickoff FY14 demos, you absolutely have to watch those. I've got a bit.ly there on the screen. To get to it, you can find it on Chatter. If you search for kickoff FY14, and there's no hyperbole when I say that if you haven't watched those, you do not have an understanding of what's going on. So it's critical that everyone goes and takes a look at the vision casting that's coming from, from Marcel and to some extent from other parts of the company. One of the things that I've realized is that Marketing Cloud is top of mind throughout all of Salesforce. Everyone's talking about it.
The other thing, Derek, is the click deck that was demonstrated at that demo. At the link, there is a link available. I think I shared it with most of the team already, but follow up with Joe and he can get it to you.
Yeah. So the other thing that's been happening in parallel is that we've been doing some assessment of integration technologies. I will run down a list of some of them here. It won't be, there are other things that are on the list, and every time I have a conversation, I find out about something new that's possibly out there. So as we all go on this journey together, as we find out about new things, new technologies, new integration points, it's important that we all share them with each other to make sure that we have the best information. I found out stuff just yesterday that, stuff that was not true 3 months ago that has just completely changed. So we've started on some initial alignments. We've had some fairly high-level meetings between Marketing Cloud and the rest of Salesforce talking about integration points, what we're going to do, what we need to do over the next month or so to make sure that if we need things to support our 1Salesforce efforts within the Salesforce core, if it's going to be delivered in time for us to demo it at Dreamforce, for example, then it's going to be in 186, and code line open for 186 is early April, I believe. So there's not a lot of time left. So really the next step now is for us to start to get aligned internally amongst all of the Marketing Cloud product teams, and that's part of what this call is about. So I have here a potential picture of the coming year. Greg and I put this together along with Joe and Jeff Anderson this week. And some of the stuff will be open to a little bit of discussion, I think. But there are a couple of key things. One is that there are some things highlighted in red here. If things that are highlighted in red will affect all products, so it's important that everybody wrap your head around the fact that there will be work to do around 1Salesforce for your product or products at a minimum for these things that are highlighted in red. So for 184, we are looking to have Salesforce identity support across all of the Marketing Cloud. So what that means is I can go to a product, click a Login with Salesforce button, and if I have a Salesforce account and if it's been mapped to my existing Buddy Media, BuyBuddy, or Radiant 6 account, then I can log in with my Salesforce credentials instead of logging in with my old credentials, and that'll get logged into the product. We have some basic framework support that's being built out right now on the Radiant 6 tech stack for 183, on the Buddy Media tech stack for 183, with SRM as a use case for that for 183. And for 184, we're looking to have this rolled out across all products. Thought for 185 is that we would have a tech preview of a unified Engage product. So that's something that you would be able to sign in with a Salesforce ID and see data from both Buddy Media and Radiant 6 technology stacks. 185, a unified Marketing Cloud API. So this would be a RESTful API that's exposing things out of the 3 technology stacks as well. Then getting into 186 timeframe, that's the stuff that we're really going to be showing at Dreamforce. So Dreamforce is in November-ish this year. I don't have the dates in front of me. And really, we talked about 4 key things with other parts of Salesforce about things that we would integrate that we could show, and that would be apps embedded within our Marketing Cloud apps embedded within the Salesforce app. So that's using a technology called Canvas, which I'll talk about these technologies later. So as I say these things, just hold your questions on them until we get to the technology and some terminology part of this meeting. So apps embedded within the Salesforce interface, SRM in the publisher and in the feed. If you've seen the Palm Springs demos, Kickoff FY14 demos, that's part of what's shown in there. It's a key part of that story. Some form of Force.com support. This one is going to be a big leap for a lot of us. I've got some suggestions of how we make progress on that. I've had some very high-level conversations around some of the ideas that I've had with folks in San Francisco to talk about just what's possible and where the paradigms line up. But we have to start making plans now for what we're going to do, deliver there. We also talked, and Greg, this is an update I haven't shared with you yet. According to the folks in San Francisco, we had hoped to have some unified dashboard reporting stories that we could show. Apparently, that's not going to be possible. That the technology is not there for us to expose our data in a way that you could build dashboard reports. That might prove to not be true, but currently it looks like that we won't be able to do anything significant there. But Jeff was going to do some. Jeff was going to play around with one thing, showing some visual force within dashboards. Who's on the call and has that ready, we'll be able to switch to him later in the call. Then also in 186, looking to have the Radiant 6 for Salesforce integration project migrated entirely to core. That takes us up to the end of this calendar year. Then I kind of skipped over 187. And then 188 as a target date for a unified Engage product going GA and having 100% Salesforce identity across the Marketing Cloud, which means after 188 or come 188, nobody will log in with their old credentials. The only option for logging into Marketing Cloud will be with your Salesforce login.
What will be the first use of that in that timeline? Not across everything. Like which item there? Well, you have Salesforce identity support in 184, which just means it's there but not being used.
No, so that means support. It means that you can log in with your Salesforce ID with every product. It means that
184.
For 184. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why we're talking about this.
No, that's good. That's why I wanted to ask the question. 188,
a year from now, that becomes the only way that you can log in. So the support for it versus being mandatory is the difference over the year. All right, so Dreamforce, I mentioned, we hit on 4 key points within the Salesforce core R&D group about places we are going to work on building on integration stories. So that's Marketing Cloud in core, So application tabs for applications that would be just, basic glorified iframes. Possibly a marketing tab. We're going to talk about that in more detail in a minute. SRM and the publisher, Force.com support, and then that dashboard, which I've crossed out for now. So for everybody, you'll have, if you have a product, at a minimum, part of the story has to be about embedding that product within the Salesforce core and having to do probably some CSS styling so that it looks right. Now, the marketing tab. So this is one thing that we had a bunch of discussion on, and this is where this is the first takeaway where we're going to need. And Greg, actually, we didn't pick a deadline for this, and we probably should do that. What we're wrestling with is, should we have a marketing tab within the Salesforce interface that is some kind of a summary screen or a roll-up screen that shows information from across the product suite? So option, we've seen various click decks and UX options that had the chatter feed in it. The big debate that we had the past couple of days was, why would we have a marketing tab which just has a chatter feed on it? Why wouldn't we just send you to the chatter feed if what we wanted to show you was chatter? So
I think.
Go ahead.
Just to interject there, Eric. I think the context or the perspective that was somewhat new for me is, we've often talked about Marketing Cloud Home, and in true Salesforce world, Salesforce container or UI, there is no such thing as, let's say, an application home. It's Salesforce Home. So when you go to Home, you're at the Salesforce Home tab, and on that tab, there's the feed. So it's not like we have a real estate where we get to take over a default home. We'd end up having to go to a new tab, either one that we create, and a user can choose to make that their home, but the typical notion of a home is Salesforce Home. So it really then begs the question of, do we need some sort of a summary entry point, or do we just get right into here are tabs for different types of apps? So that's the debate that we're having, and I think Derek, I'll let you keep going, but I think the thinking right now is, well, maybe we do need kind of a summary tab or summary home tab that's specific to Marketing Cloud, but it's not. We need to be careful around the terminology that it's when people think about home, it's really Salesforce Home.
Right. So I pulled up, learning how to use my mouse here. So if you see on the screen, I pulled up, say I went into a marketing, I went to the app switcher and I chose marketing, and what that means is in Salesforce is I'm going to load a bunch of tabs. So if you can imagine, instead of these tabs saying campaigns, leads, opportunities, contacts, they will say things like listen, engage, social advertising, whatever labels we put on them. And there will be a chatter one, and a lot of the mock-ups that we've had have looked similar to this in that it was a chatter-centric view. But we can do that without we don't have to build anything to do that. We can just say our marketing app is going to be a collection of tabs, and the chatter tab is one of the tabs, and that's the default. And so then the question we need to answer is, do we want to have another tab that is a roll-up that's a marketing tab? And so then the question for all of you as product owners is, if we have that, what would you want to put on there from your product? So one of the things that we'd like to get back in, what's a good timeline, Greg? A week?
Yeah, I think what day is it today? Wednesday? I think by next Wednesday, yeah.
All right, so by next Wednesday, for each product, the suggestions about what you would put on a marketing tab, if we had a dedicated one that we want set as the landing point for someone when they switched into the marketing app.
And when you ask that, Derek, I think what we're really talking about is visual information like a chart, or I think just some expectations around the boundary of what we could display there. What's the thinking?
Well, I think we could put anything on there potentially.
Okay.
Like to me, when I think about it, I think a lot about, for example, for me, I think it's just the ideas that Bill and those guys had with the original Marketing Cloud Home Kit initiative, which had a bunch of summary charts and information about about my org or about my campaigns or about my about my tab performance. Like there's all these, there are a bunch of things that we could put on there. The question is, do we have enough high-value things with the scenarios that we have? If we have, depending on the different user personas who are going to approach this, do we have enough that makes sense that we would actually dedicate an entire tab to doing that? That we would have this landing page, or do we want to just send people right into their task-oriented application based on their user role?
And keeping in mind there is already a global Salesforce home, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chatter as well. Is that right? Those
yeah, so I have my home on the screen here. So that's just, if we sent someone home is what you'd see, which is my tasks and a dashboard, and they can customize this. I don't know what you can do to customize it. Jeff would be able to do that.
But it's the home for every
This is the
single
home for
app.
all. Right. This is a global home. This is not specific to anything. And then you have Chatter as an alternative landing spot where you could just send them straight to the Chatter feed. And SRM is going to be in the feed. We need to talk about what types of other things could go in the feed from our products as time marches on, and what makes sense to go in there. The only use case that we've really put on the table for Dreamforce is the SRM story.
So is the question what widgets they would put on the generic home, or what they would put on a marketing home?
I think a marketing home.
So it's a separate tab.
Yeah. If we had a dedicated marketing tab, what we put on there. So I'll send out a follow-up email to everyone just as a reminder for this. But we're looking, so by next Wednesday, we need to collect all the ideas so we can actually decide whether or not we need to put that onto the roadmap to build that out. Is everyone clear on that part? Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So the other part on that, in terms of stuff for Dreamforce, there's the marketing tab. SRM is, we've been talking about that. Ajay's doing a lot of thinking on that area. And Force.com support is where we need to start to stretch our thinking a little bit. So I've got another slide about some ideas about how to work on this, but this is about what do we want to expose out of our platform into the Salesforce platform to allow customers to do things that we don't currently let them do through our user interfaces. So this is what Marcel calls the power to say yes. So when a customer says, can you do something? We say, well, we don't have it in our UI, but you can code against our API, or you can go into force.com and you can put some of the stuff together yourself. So this is about trying to find the key things that we could expose out of our technology stacks into Apex, into Visualforce, that would be meaningful and useful. So what I have on the screen here are not what we're going to do. These are some ideas to try to spark everyone's thought process. Think about your product, think about the types of objects that you have and the sort of things that it might make sense to expose. Bearing in mind that Salesforce tends to be a record-based system. With just a few, some of the ideas that we had, things like the engagement summary, the thing that goes, I had never seen this report before, this one was new to me, the engagement summary report that goes out, maybe being able to get my outgoing posts and some metrics around those, seeded content, ads, maybe maybe being able to pull out my social ad campaigns and some metrics around them, being able to get my topic profiles. I had thought around topic profiles that you might not want. You don't want to pull the topic profile for the point of manipulating it. Then that's the key. We'll talk about this in a second. But the key thing to keep in mind is that these are at this stage read only. This is read only pulling of objects out of out of our API into Salesforce. If people want to interact with these things, they will have to call our REST API. They can't pull a topic profile, make a change to it, and have it right back into our system. That's just not supported. There's no technology for it. But you might want to be able to pull out your topic profile and get its EMV, and you might want to get some other stats around. Maybe it's keyword groups and the volume per keyword group, or whatever would make sense for us to expose. Maybe the insight subscriptions. I think of those. These could be lookups. If you had topic profiles and insight subscriptions as lookups, then you would be able to then make requests for some aggregate data. So being able to request a time series or a time series with insights or a conversation cloud, or, top insights for something. Similar to, in a similar vein, you would have lookup of buddy. That's not how you spell hierarchy, but anyway. Whatever that word is, look up a buddy hierarchy data so that you could then, so I can then query for client social account, tab version, and then be able to. Joe, what was the example you gave yesterday? You'd be able to pull out all the German versions of your tabs. But the example you gave yesterday?
Yeah, something like that. Basically, you can build a view within Salesforce of some report that you couldn't normally do through the Buddy native UI, but not have it in just raw CSV data. I want to build like a customized dashboard.
Yeah, have this stuff come back as objects that you can do things with.
Yeah.
And then really probably most of Buddy Analytics would be candidate things. I think, and this is my bias on this a little bit, is that we should especially for a first pass, for things that will be interesting. This year we should be thinking about lookup data and aggregate data. I think those are the places where we can bring a lot of value. I think if we start to get into things like try to expose, every blog post or every Facebook comment out through Apex, first of all, the maturity is just not going to be there in terms of caching on the Salesforce side. So it would end up being very, the high latency and high bandwidth to transfer that data, because it would transfer on demand every time. I think the use cases for larger volumes of data make a lot of sense right now for us to do things within our platforms, to do the aggregations ourselves, and then expose that roll-up data, as opposed to trying to expose every piece of every blog post and every piece of workflow and have it all rolled up in force.com. Doesn't make as much sense to me. So those are just some ideas, and like I said, this should be to scratch the surface. So this is the other takeaway is for Wednesday to come up with candidate objects that you would expose into force.com. And so figuring out how to do that, of course, is a challenge. So we've been talking before a little bit, and Jeff had sent out some resources to folks around learning about force.com. So to help in this process, you're going to want to learn in force.com. I think we had some good suggestion yesterday from somebody was to just to go talk to some sales engineers, especially the sales engineers who have good cross-product training will have ideas, and some of them have solved really interesting things. If you go look at at the Chris Janning demo that he put up on Chatter, as much as there are I have some hang-ups with the implementation. It really takes advantage of mashing up the Radian 6 platform with the Salesforce platform, in a creative way. And it's a good example of where the type of data, if we expose that data, that could be solved in a different. We solved in a cleaner way. And then talk to your technical leads about what kind of stuff makes sense to expose as objects. This kind of leads into some other thinking that we have to do around API, because we need, in addition to exposing these things out to force.com, we also need to think about how we're going to expose objects out through a unified marketing cloud API, but that of 180, listed as 185, and we can't rely on a single API team to produce all of the outputs for all of our, for our entire cloud, right? So we need product teams to start stepping up to, sort of to the API design table and say, okay, for my product, these are the things that I want to expose. These are the things I want to expose into force.com. These are the things I want to expose out through the public API. So as you think about your product, think about your user interface for the web, and for the phone, and for the API, and for force.com, and the experience for the standalone web, and the experience for the embedded within core. Like we have all these scenarios that we have to think about, and that's really that's what it's going to mean to actually own the product. So there'll be there are all those different parts. Those are all the ways that the products end up exposing themselves. All right. So I'll run down some of the terminology and technology that's kicking around. You will have heard some of these things in various contexts, and then we'll have some discussion, which will give us time to talk about really anything anyone needs to know in order to move on to next steps. So first thing is something you'll hear called either external objects or virtual S objects. This is a technology that's been built in core as a way to reach out to third-party platforms to pull data into the Salesforce core. So when we talk about Force.com integration, what we're talking about doing is exposing things from our technology stacks into the Salesforce core using this external objects programming model that they've come up with. And it's going to mean some work for us, without a doubt. We actually have to be we have to tread very carefully about the balance between the number of things we want to expose and the amount of time it's going to take to build it all, because we will need to implement stuff on our end. It's not, all the work does not live on the Salesforce end. There are certain things that we will have to be able to handle, whether it's filters, aggregations. If you take this to its full extreme, things that you could program in SOCL would actually be, something they would take that SOCL request, turn it into an API standard, and push it out to us, and we would actually be responsible for doing this filtering and aggregating and grouping and sending it back to them. There are two different implementations, well, three implementations for this right now. These things can be built actually in the Salesforce core in Java or Apex, and then they have an OData implementation, which doesn't require as much work actually to have. Doesn't require work to have it inside of Salesforce core. We're still evaluating what route we need to go down in terms of a technical implementation, but that shouldn't hold anybody back from being able to go and create a list of the types of objects that make sense to expose from each product. The second integration technology that you might have heard about is something called Aura, which was used to be called Lumen. It was called Plume for a while. And this is a UI. It's a component framework for building user interfaces. We may end up using it for some things. We haven't committed to it. You might have heard Aura come up in different contexts, and people have different understandings of what it means. It is strictly an implementation technology for building user interfaces, and that's it. So it doesn't have to do with Project Y. It doesn't have to do with CSS, the look and feel. This is strictly a developer framework, and so you can safely ignore it if you're a product manager. Other things you may have heard of is the Touch project. If you have an iPad, or if you want to change the user agent on your browser, you can go to Salesforce. I think it's go to Salesforce and then just cut off the end of the URL and put /m, and I think that'll load the Touch version. So there's a Touch version of the Salesforce interface. You'll have heard Project Y. I'm not 100% sure on the current state of Project Y. There's another thing called Project One, and these things all have to do with user experience, and Joe knows more than I do about all the latest and greatest on these things. You want to be familiar with all these technologies, because one of the things we have to be able to do is take our applications and surface them within the Aloha interface. So Aloha is the standard browser interface for Salesforce. Be able to surface within the Touch interface. That's a separate web application that's actually built on top of Aura. That's just a technical implementation detail, but it's a separate web application for exposing Salesforce, and it was built targeted at iPads. There's some stuff, and when we get to the discussion part, if there's time, Joe can talk a little bit about what he knows about the phone story, because I'm not up to speed on the absolute latest. But we have to think about all these user interfaces. So when you see things like Project One, that does impact your product if you have a user interface. You're going to have to think about making the product fit in when we embed it within Salesforce in these various contexts. Canvas and Global Nav. My understanding is right now there's maybe it's a little sketchy about whether it's actually being funded or not. But Canvas is a glorified iframe. It's a way to embed third-party applications that use Salesforce identity into the Salesforce core. So, and then there's some JavaScript hooks in there for allowing the iframe to communicate back with its containing browser page. I haven't dug deeply into the implementation details, but Canvas will be the basis for embedding all of the Marketing Cloud applications within the Salesforce interface. So you'll have to think about taking the middle part of the application, potentially taking out headers where appropriate or changing things around so we can actually embed. If you go into Chatter, actually I'll just show this. This will be fast.
I think another good example of that one is if you go look up V2 Moms in Salesforce, I believe that's what I'm doing. Okay.
That's what I'm going to show here on my on the screen. So if you go to my my Chatter page, and if I click on work.com, what loads in here is actually just an iframe, and this is work.com loading in the iframe. So if I just view the frame source, I'll grab the URL. So I can actually take the URL that iframe post to is hosting, and you can actually pull that up in its own standalone app. So all this is how we'll be looking to embed our applications inside of Salesforce as well. That I'll go to a tab, and it's just going to load an iframe that loads up off of coming out of our data centers. All right, what happened to my screen? There we go. Okay. So that's what Canvas is. When you hear that term, you might hear the term Identity Cloud or Salesforce Identity. This refers to a set of technologies for allowing us to use Salesforce as our identity provider.
Still seeing your Chatter feed.
Crap. I know what happened. Hold on. There. That better? Yeah?
No, sir. Nope. Still seeing Chatter feed.
Okay, hold on. And how about now?
And there we go.
All right. So Identity Cloud is the technology that we're going to use for single sign-on. So what this means, what it boils down to ultimately is we're going to use OAuth with Salesforce, so that when you come into our app, if you come to our app through a standalone login page, and you're going to hit a login with Salesforce button, and it's going to do an OAuth dance with Salesforce, and you get logged in. When we embed our applications within the Salesforce interface, there's a security token that gets passed with the iframe, so that you're automatically logged into the app, and there's no sign-in. In that scenario, I would just log into Salesforce proper, and all the apps would just be logged in when I went to visit them. You will hear the term BPOs, which I believe stands for Base Platform Object, and I cannot speak too much about the technical reasons that they have these, but these are an alternative to what are called standard objects within Salesforce. They have different limitations, and I really actually don't know the details. Jeff, you know more about BPOs.
Yep, BPOs are the roadmap to get out, part of the roadmap to get off Oracle and into Hadoop land. The BPOs basically give you the same extensibility of a custom object without having to go through all of the different red tape that you had to before with standard objects. And you can build out different features as you require them. So there's less overhead with the objects as well, like coming pre-bundled with validation rules that end users would never use and stuff like that.
So is it a lighter weight version of a standard object?
Yeah, it's a super lightweight version of a standard object and a custom object even. Out of the box, it only comes with system fields like who owns it, when was it last modified, just very, very basic fields. So you're really building an object right from scratch. Okay.
All right. And so we're talking about standard objects and custom objects there as well. So standard object is a thing like a contact record in Salesforce is an instance of a standard object. Custom objects are things that you can define yourself. So if you haven't done this already, it's worth going. Create your own development edition org. You can just do that right think it's developer.force.com. Create your own dev edition org, go in, play around with actually defining your own custom objects, see some of the stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can do. I like to say it's like, it's like access in the cloud on steroids. You can do a whole bunch of stuff quite easily, just, point and click, fill in some fields. There's no programming required. You'll hear talk about the commerce platform, which is the path for cross-cloud provisioning. So we've done a bunch of work in the Radiant 6 stack already, and there'll be work that we will have to do over time in the Buddy Media and BuyBuddy stacks to allow for things like automated provisioning. If you hear people talking about Raiden and Cheetah, just plug your ears and walk away. Don't worry about it. Those have to do with data center unification stuff that we are currently, it's not on our roadmap at all right now. And then entity interfaces, so ways, API proxying type stuff. But again, those things are implementation details that you shouldn't have to worry about. So those are a handful of the technologies, and those are some of the specific integration technologies. Obviously, there's a whole other set of sort of standard Salesforce terms, some of which are new to us. So depending on what you've been doing the past year or so, you may or may not have bumped into some of them. When you run into things, you're like, I have no idea what this is or what this technology is. Feel free to ping me, and when I don't know, I'll send you to someone who does. The account you pick up a lot of terms and technologies through conversations in Salesforce. So, you can always try searching on Google Sites and on Chatter when you run into things. So that's a quick rundown of the thinking around the next year for 1Salesforce, around what we've done so far, around the technologies that are available to us, and the takeaways that we need as part of the 184 planning process about what we need to expose, what we need to expose out of our platform in terms of objects and APIs, and then what we need to what we could possibly do for building that marketing cloud tab if we decide we want to have one. And then we've got about 18 minutes left to delve into whatever other topics people have questions about. So let's go.
Do you want me to show the dashboard at all?
I forgot about you, Jeff. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I do. I changed presenting
because I'm
Jeff
so quiet all the time, right?
Yes, that is definitely your problem.
Is there a plan to have for these communications as you guys kind of move forward in planning out, 1Salesforce, and just how are we going to implement the overall roadmap vision?
Yeah. So
to me, it seems like it would be valuable if you and other people sort of thinking about the big picture had a more regular, I don't know how often it needs to be, but so that all the product owners kind of, even if it's not finalized, they think they kind of are aligned with where you're going.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. We haven't really talked about what that cadence should look like, but I think it's going to be necessary to make sure we keep all moving in the same direction.
I think it's even valuable, even if at this point it's an informal conversation once, every few weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I know that when I was in New York, I think the same thing came up there. More communication was sort of the message I got, from people. They'd like to see more in the loopness on where we're going.
So on that, Mark, part of what's going to be happening is forming up a 1Salesforce working group, which will be doing that, kind of leading the charge in terms of how do we integrate into Salesforce, what's the bigger picture vision, setting some of the bigger milestones like you saw Derek present, and just to try and create a conduit for us to start to realize some of that picture. So as that group forms up and as we work on those milestones and deliverables, we very much will begin having regular checkpoints and meetings.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, you want to go ahead?
Just one more thing, just while Jeff's just getting that ready, is you probably also will start hearing some stuff around the people prospect database. that Steve Tam's working on, and a bunch of us will be working with Steve on that and sort of figuring out where that fits with the Marketing Cloud. So you may hear some stuff around that that's happening in the background as well.
All right. So basically, just to quickly talk a little bit about kind of the design model of Salesforce, because I know we touched on Home and Chatter earlier in the conversation, and I'm just going to show you reports and dashboards real quick. But the design model in Salesforce, and I got pinged by a couple of people who are a little bit confused here. So the Home tab basically is when you log in as the CRM user, you're the end user, you're a sales guy, you're a customer service person, or whoever you are. The idea is when you come to the Home tab in Salesforce, is basically showing you immediate items that you need to worry about. If you're a sales guy, you've got tasks here. You need to follow up with some salespeople, some contacts that you're trying to sell to. If you have various tasks you have to follow up on, cases or anything like that. So the home page is very, very functional, and that's different to some extent than the paradigm you might use when you're coming into the Radian 6 dashboard, where you're there to create widgets and you're there to look at output from widgets. So that there's that slight nuance and difference there, and I'll follow up on that in a second. In the Chatter feed, it's kind of Salesforce's solution to social, but it's also kind of following that whole Facebook paradigm where everything's coming up in a feed, and your feed is going to surface things to you in a more real-time, social, interactive fashion. And the Chatter feed is really designed to foster communication internally, and then surface those things that you need to know. And that's where I think some of the products that we talked about could probably fit in. But more specifically to the use case, for instance, around the Radian 6 dashboard, there is a slight difference there. Where the Radian 6 dashboard starts with maybe a topic profile, you might want to draw a similarity to a report, because a report is kind of where you collect and define the data that you're going to collect. So in a topic profile, you're putting in keywords, and in a report, you're really grabbing all of the information that's inside your CRM, and you're trying to put it in a manageable way. So once you've actually defined reports, I won't get too far down the pipe with reports, but you can see this is reporting on cases. Cases that are inside, that are grouped by open and closed inside Salesforce. Very straightforward, standard use case. That assumes the data is there in Salesforce, so it might be a little bit different for our integration. But then once you've actually defined the report, you would put the widget, quote unquote, the widget on top of it. So if you think of in the Salesforce dashboard or in the Radian 6 dashboard, this is the visual representation of that data. So in a normal organization, you might see, for instance, things grouped by, adoption dashboards, how much are people using Salesforce, sales dashboards for sales activity, lead generation. They do have some basic marketing ones for marketing automation and support and so on. But to kind of get everybody thinking, a little bit about how it might apply to your product, I just want to show you 3 primary widget types. So Salesforce actually comes out of the box with quite a few different widget types. I'll just edit this one here and show you what I mean. So it comes with line graphs, bar graphs, horizontals, pie graphs, donut graphs, et cetera. And really, it's super easy for the end user. They grab the graph type they want to use, and then they come into their reports that I was talking about earlier, and then they drag a report into the widget. And hypothetically, if the report type matches up with the widget type, they're going to get a visual representation of what that is. For us, we can really take it one step further, though. We can use code, so we can use Visualforce to be able to define something that we want to appear in a widget, and that's where we can start to do things like connecting to the Radian 6 API to be able to pull back some of those aggregate data values that Derek was talking about and put a visual representation. So the way you would do that is you'd grab a Visualforce component, throw it there into the column where you want it to appear on the report, and then grab the Visualforce page that maybe you wanted to have represented. And in this use case, what I'm doing is I've basically called for cases using a standard controller in Visualforce, and I'm just giving myself some menu options here so I can start to filter through them. And this is a read-only, but it's an interactive widget once it's actually here loaded up on the dashboard. So you can see my currently open cases in the Salesforce org gives me 3 bullet points, high-level description in the subject line. Another widget type, just quickly, that you can actually drill into is, this is a gauge, for instance. Visual representation, very straightforward. It's telling me there's a total of 26 cases that are currently in this org. If I click into it, this is the equivalent of maybe the drill down. And Radian 6 if I was to draw a bit of an analogy there. So again, this takes you back to the underlying report. And then the third use case is third-party visualizations, where you could go to off-platform. And, eventually this is probably going to be replaced by or something like that. But in this case, I've called on Google widget that's using data values in my org to populate their visualization, which then becomes static. Can't drill into it. It's not interactive. It's read-only. But the visualization then can exceed anything that you can do in Visualforce or that you could otherwise do with standard components for building dashboards. That's it. Sorry if I went too fast. Any questions? No. Am I still on the line?
All right. Yeah, no question. All right, so lots of stuff here. The the key things the next week or so is we need to start to identify those use cases for the products. What do folks have to say? Let's open it up for discussion right now.
Hey guys, it's Kim. Shocker. Just wondering if we can kind of roll back a little bit and kind of define, maybe Greg, can you maybe give us what the new vision is for what we want to achieve by Dreamforce this year? Because I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to where I thought I was going versus what was presented here today. I guess I wasn't envisioning the current Flex Analysis dashboard with a modified UI in Salesforce.
I wasn't thinking that the Flex dashboard would go in there. The notion of application tabs still assumes that we'd be building out new listen functionality. It's just that it would be surfacing within Salesforce as a giant iframe.
Gotcha.
And the same applies to engagement console / conversation buddy.
Yeah, and I think the other thing probably to mention, Derek, for context is, some of what we're focusing on first is, those areas of what are we doing for home, what are we doing for SRM, what are we doing for Force.com integration, and then there was the dashboard reports, the reporting pieces, and that was really, and I think there's a fifth one around, how do we set up a single sign-on, those things. Those really kind of bubbled up to the top of the list based on kind of first pass integration points that we need to be addressing immediately, and those came out of architectural discussions that you were having with Fisher and Tam and company, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So it's not. The picture is not necessarily representative of our entire roadmap. It's that we need to take our entire roadmap and fit it into this model that we're starting to evolve. And we're all going to be going down to San Francisco at the end of this month and starting to really work closely with the teams that are these 4 or 5 areas are going to be some of the key ones that we're focusing on immediately. But ultimately, how we realize all of the products that we've currently got on the roadmap, we're going to be through one of those channels, right? So our roadmap essentially stays the same. We're refining what we're going to be doing for integration in the near term as quickly as we can, essentially. But the other thing to remember is there's a lot of effort happening at Salesforce as well around the 1Salesforce initiative, and we're both working and running in parallel. And our objective over the next few weeks is to start getting ourselves to be running together. So working more closely with the 1Salesforce team, or the leaders that we should be working with within Salesforce core, so that as we evolve our two-release roadmap, we have a better understanding as to how those things expose themselves you're looking at the top of the list at this point.
Yeah. And to underscore what Greg just said, right, the stuff that I'm showing here, is only the one Salesforce view of things that we want to do this year. This is not everything we want to do this year.
What about the 184, like target for Salesforce ID support across all apps? Is at this point, do all product owners know what that means, or is this like the first time we're telling?
So I've talked to quite a few already. The people that I haven't talked to about this yet are I haven't talked to Liam about it directly. Jenny's been just dealing with it from the Buddy Core side, which should cover all the Buddy products just implicitly. And I've been talking to Ajay, and Kim and I are going to be talking about it next week. And I've been ignoring the EC scenario because I'm kind of hoping we can just not do that one for Salesforce Identity.
Is there a non-web path to that?
Oh yes, Mike. yes. That's what's on the wall right there behind you, where it says OAuth under the API.
But that would be web. I'm talking like native app.
Oh yeah. They're just going to have to be.
Yeah.
We should sit and talk about that. You and I.
But Salesforce SSO would support that.
Yeah, Salesforce has a bunch of scenarios that they support.
We do have to talk about that soon, because in order to say that for 184, we should keep into mind EC and mobile at the very least, right?
Yeah. Jenny, are you on the phone?
So the other thing not to forget, guys, is the Excel plugin. So Sandeep needs to be looped in here as well.
Hello?
Yeah. Hey, Jenny,
okay.
I was just wondering.
Better?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just wondering about
okay.
Have you guys made progress on the single sign-on part? I haven't talked to you in a while about it.
Well, single sign-on was sort of our stretch for 183. So, and that was going to be actually completed in 184.
Crap.
Don't you all remember Derek's honey-do list?
Yeah, my presentation, Derek's honey-do list. It was last on the list, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just to make sure everyone's on the same page for it for 184, the commitment for it for 184 was made to Parker Harris, so there's no letting it slip past 184.
Okay, yep. You have it as the priority for 184.
All right.
Yeah. Derek, can you clarify some of these other priorities with dates on them, like having a Buddy Media API by 185 is pretty new news to me. So I'd like to kind of understand what the commitments are there and what the expectations are and who is building all of this. Like, am I expected to? Oh. Feedback. Okay.
Yeah, so
okay. Sorry. So, am I expected to prioritize this for my team, or because I had other priorities that I was designing for post 184, 5, 6. So this is absolutely new and going to kind of change my plans dramatically.
Well, that should have been on your roadmap already, because I thought that came off of the three release / 6 release roadmap that Patrick presented a couple months ago. Was it not already in that list? We certainly had conversations about it.
I guess my challenge is merging the 3RR with this list with my list and not understanding what the focus is.
I think it might be an idea just for us to circle back next week about the API in general.
Yeah, I mean,
Greg, what's your thoughts about that?
It does seem like you need a separate conversation.
Yeah, I just think that right now is probably not the best time to have an API discussion, but I think next week will be a much better time to have an API discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to have a number of conversations about it. The short bit is that I've heard the message from multiple angles that we need to have a Buddy API, and we know that we want to have Buddy objects exposed to the API as part of the unified Marketing Cloud API. We can't go to market with a Marketing Cloud API that is only the Radian6 API rebranded.
So I guess let's take a step back. I don't think the issue is the API. The issue is that we have 3RR, we have this new roadmap, I have my own roadmap, and there's no way to reconcile the three. And you have timelines on things that I haven't committed to.
So, like I said, when I presented this is our projections about what should be reasonable, but you have to take this and fit it into your product backlogs. The one sort of list of dependencies is that for Dreamforce, we want to show force.com support. To show force.com support, we need API support. So, if we don't build any Buddy API functionality in 185, then we're trying to do everything in 186 in time for Dreamforce.
But shouldn't this be merged into the roadmap?
This has to be, yeah. So this is this 1Salesforce stuff is has been coming, the past month, right? It's just been emerging, and our 3RR later this month is where we need to talk about our total cloud-wide, global priorities. So these are 1Salesforce tasks that we need to do that need to get weaved into our roadmap. I don't make the roadmap.
And I think
these are the things we have to do to achieve the 1Salesforce vision.
So Derek's absolutely right here, and I think the next inflection point when we rationalize all roadmaps is the 3RRR in 2 weeks' time, and then the results of that 2.5-day 3RRR will be the formal roadmaps that will drive into specific release backlogs. So everyone who's got a roadmap right now, that all gets rationalized in 2.5 weeks. But I think the important thing to point out that a roadmap doesn't equal a backlog. A roadmap inspires a backlog. And, things will obviously be planned at that planning session that can't be physically done, and that's okay, but that's when we'll figure it out in terms of building a shipping schedule and everything from there. And I think what Derek's done here, I think, is excellent because it says, here's the vision about where we want to be. Here are the things that are really important to a company like 1Salesforce. Here's reasonable expectations about how we might arrive at that point, and then we go and rationalize that against our other priorities. So I like what we're doing here. I think it's the right approach, but I do acknowledge that we've got a whole collection of different backlogs and a whole collection of interesting dependencies, and we do need to rationalize those.
This is nothing new. That's nothing new.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Anyone else? I know we're starting to go over time now. Anyone else have any thing they need to throw out there before we wrap up?
Can you ring my cell, Derek, after we're done?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe someone's I might have to get your cell number. I'm not sure. Yeah, Mike's going to give it to me.
Okay.
Is the Wednesday target for having the thoughts for what you on a marketing tab and things that we would expose to force.com and out to the Marketing Cloud API for Wednesday? Is there anyone who can't commit to doing that? All right. Silence interpreted to mean sure, we can do that.
Well, Derek, I don't know. I'm kind of with Abby. I'm just a little bit behind in terms of we don't even have our tech leads up to speed on a lot of this stuff in terms of, some of us have kind of started driving out a vision for our pieces and whatnot, but I don't know where all the other teams are at in terms of, exactly what we're trying to expose and by when, and I don't know. I think Wednesday's probably aggressive, but that's just me. Maybe I'm missing something.
Derek, is the ask more about just kind of like the vision of what we think type of data we could get into the dashboard more than actually coming ready with sizing and all the rest of it?
Yeah, absolutely. This
right.
is a brainstorming exercise as much as it is anything, right?
Yeah, this should be about putting ideas on the table, not about coming with estimates and technical implementation details. All right. Anyone know what's got anything else? We'll call it a wrap.
Just one last thing, Derek. I don't know if anybody's seen the Chris Jennings demo, and I know there's some technical problems with it, but if anybody wants to see, I have the dashboard set up in one of my orgs. It's a really good kickoff place to brainstorm. Like right now, I'm looking at a Facebook daily threshold of how many posts have come in on a topic profile, or the number of keywords that were mentioned last quarter, and different keyword groupings and stuff. So there's a lot of really good kind of aggregate level visual representations I already have in the org. So if anybody wants to give me a call or anything like that to walk you through this dashboard or help with the brainstorming, just let me know, because I've been building quite a few of these little widgets already. So.
All right, sounds good. We'll plan to talk next week.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Derek.
Everyone.